Moving the pavement, walking the beat. It's the way police officers patrolled the streets years ago, and they're doing it again in parts of Little Havana. It's part of Operation Know Your Neighborhood, where officers get out of their cars and onto the streets. Tonight, Officer Raimundo Socorro walked through his zone near Flagler and 12th Street. Along the way, he stops at La Esquina de Tejo's restaurant. He talks to the owner, who tells him things are quiet, although business is a little slow. Outside, a cup of Cuban coffee and a chat with a passerby. Is this informal atmosphere that Operation Know Your Neighborhood is all about?
Some open up to me and tell me their concerns or about the city or the area where they're living at, and some more about their personal lives.
The Little Havana Police Substation has been open for about 4 months, and officers say this new program lets people know they're here.
Do you like to be yelled at? Do you like to be treated well? I think it's fair to say that most of us want to be treated well. We want to be treated like we belong. We want to be respected. But let me ask you, have you yourself mistreated anyone, made him feel less than? Or have you ever had a contact with a person in an official capacity, a person of authority who has made you feel less than? Well, today, we're going to take a look at taking personal action and changing community culture. I am Robert Asencio, and today on Vets and Badges, I have my colleague and co-host, retired police chief and military historian, David Magnusson. How are you, David?
Doing great. How about yourself?
Awesome. So today, it is our honor and distinct pleasure to introduce somebody that's been in law enforcement for a better part of 3 decades. A friend, a cop's cop, if you will, that not only did he serve us in police work, but beyond police work, when he retired, he went on to serve at Miami-Dade College of Criminal Justice, a standard for the nation when it comes to criminal justice. We have the former dean of the college with us, Dr. Raimundo Socorro. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you for having me.
Awesome, man. So we look forward to speaking with you. We want to talk about this whole idea of changing mindsets, changing through training, right? And you brought up and you've built curriculum and a training model around the concept of procedural justice. What is procedural justice?
To put it simply, procedural justice is just basically how you treat people. There's 4 pillars. You give people a voice, you treat them fair, you're impartial in your interactions with them, and you're transparent. You treat everybody like that, and you're more likely to gain their trust. Thereby, you're gaining legitimacy. The interactions that you have with them tend to be more amicable than if you go another way.
As we've discussed in your career, right? I mean, many times we talked about it. How you treat people usually dictates what the outcome will be.
The old adage, how you treat people the way you want to be treated, doesn't stop at the door of the police department.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, more than any other occupation, perhaps more military may be different, but it holds true there. I think Dr. Socorro would agree. That's what it's about. Treat people fairly. Treat them with dignity.
Yeah, yeah. And now, since you left the college, you went on to train, or you have assumed another role, and that's the Director of International Studies and Training, right?
Yes.
At Indian River State College. Tell us about that.
We work with INL, the State Department, and we train other countries' law enforcement officers in different aspects. We've been training SWAT for the Colombian National Police, the Tactical Lifesaver, also for the Mexican Police, female officer survival. We got asked to do a SWAT assessment in Jerusalem. We do a lot of different training, mostly in tactics, but now it looks like everything's going to be moving towards investigations.
So, Ray, let's give the audience a little perspective of who Raimundo Socorro is. You spent 26 years with the city of Miami. What did you do with the city of Miami? Give us a little feel of your experiences with the city and your positions.
I worked mainly proactive units. I did some investigation units. I was in the Sergeant of General Investigations for the Central District. I believe when you were the Sergeant for the North District. I was Internal Affairs. I did 2 years of Internal Affairs as an investigator. But I did quite a bit of years as a SWAT team. I was an officer a trainer, a sergeant, a lieutenant, and eventually became the commander of the SWAT team. I worked street narcotics. I worked the crime suppression team. I worked the multi-agency gang strike force. Very proactive units in the police department.
Yeah, so you guys work together.
Yeah, we worked separately but together with the same background in speaking with the type of jobs we were doing. The type of jobs that you get a call at 3 a.m. It's never a good news. There's always something going on, and the type of job or the type of unit where you got to sort of be proactive with your pedal to the metal, which is why what Ray says, Dr. Socorro, what he talks about just resonates so much.
For sure. And for greater perspective, we're talking to, like I said, a cop's cop, person who's not just walk the talk, or talk the talk, but walk the beat, right? Knows what it is to be in the face, danger, head on, and fight, and persevere. Dr. Socorro, Ray, excuse me, because I have a fondness towards you. And if you don't mind, I'll call you Ray.
No, absolutely, no problem.
Let's talk about, this idea of creating better outcomes for law enforcement officers. But it's a rule that I guess can transcend into everyday life. Let's talk about it.
When I teach procedural justice to the academies, I tell them that this applies to everything in life. And I tell them why it's important to use it in their daily interactions with every individual that they come across with in the community. Because as I said, they're more likely to have less confrontational interactions if they give people a voice, treat them fair, be impartial, and be transparent. And that, at the end of the career, helps you out with your mental health. You have less confrontations, so you'll have less traumatic incidents. Unfortunately, the training that we have is geared towards deterrence through effectiveness, and that's how you get compliance. That doesn't work. Unfortunately, we're only effective in 4 out of every 1,000 instances of crime do they get successfully prosecuted through the court system. That's according to Radcliffe, who wrote on intelligence-led policing. If we're not effective in deterring, how else can we gain compliance, cooperation, decision acceptance? We do that through gaining legitimacy, and we gain legitimacy through procedural justice, treating people fair. There's a lot of instances I could talk about where I treated somebody fair and the person saved my life. I have one incident in particular. I was driving solo this day because my partner didn't come to work. She was out on a date.
Good reason not to come to work.
I drive and I see a drug deal go down. This is in the Grove, in the West Grove.
Pocono Grove in Miami, Florida.
I make a U-turn. The buyer gets in the car, but I wanted the seller. I walk up to him. His back is to me. I call out to him, and when I get close, he turns around. He sizes me up, and I said, "Can I talk to you?" And just as I got close enough, he pushed me and took off running. We went to Elizabeth, and then Elizabeth to Thomas, and then he went east on Thomas, and he crossed the street, and he went into the back of a house. But as he went to the back of the house, I heard a groan. So I knew something happened. I stopped. I called him out. He came out. What happened was he had gotten clotheslined.
Hate it when that happens.
Yeah. So I arrested him. In the foot chase, he dropped the drugs, and I scooped him up. I had to take him to Ward D at that time.
Which is the hospital unit emergency for prisoners, right?
So you're waiting there till they assess him. And I was talking to him, and I'm telling him what's the process, what's going to happen, even though he knows it. But I'm just having a conversation. We talked about football. We talked about girls. We just had a conversation. I then took him to the Dade County Jail, and that was over. I used to see him after that arrest. I saw him a couple times. And in fact, one time he was sitting in the corner on the end of Thomas Street. I knew he was selling drugs, but I couldn't find it. I pulled up a crate, and we sat there, and Robin was with me, and we were having a conversation. Fast forward now to the 31st. We get a call at Hibiscus and Grand of loud music. When we arrive, I get out of the car, and I go to where the DJ is. Robin goes to the right.
That's your partner.
That's my partner. She goes to the right, and she's talking to him. I don't know what she's talking about. Ask him to lower down the music. We get back in the car, and Robin says, we need to talk. So we went to the 7-Eleven, and she tells me that he just warned her that at midnight, while they're shooting the guns in the air and doing the fireworks, they're going to use us to mask the shooting at us. They're going to find out where we're at, and they're going to try to take us out. I give that as an example that if I would have treated that guy in a different manner, would he have possibly saved my life?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Oh, so relationships, actually, the way you treat people usually dictates the course of a relationship. You share stories like that, and what are your thoughts?
Well, going to the store he just said, that is very viable, because up in the north end
North end of the city of Miami.
north end of the city of Miami, on New Year's Eve, there was a specific incident where shots were fired and a cop was shot in the head. He survived, and so these things do happen. I mean, there's a lot of stories, but I can tell you, my partner and I, we arrest a guy. He's been around the block more than a few times. Had a bunch of heroin on him. He knew the game. It was fine. We treated him with respect. There he is, 741, 3 weeks later. Again, amazing how they bond out so quick. But again, we get him again. Put him in the car. This time we didn't. We sit in there. We hear the clink. We jump out. Gun underneath. He didn't want to get caught with the gun. And I just flat out asked him, why didn't you shoot us?
The patrol car.
Why didn't you shoot? Well, that was our fault for not searching him.
Yeah, but
why
still,
didn't you shoot us? He goes, first of all, I'm not a cop killer. Second of all, you guys treated me square last time. I have an attorney. It's not a big deal. And the maturity level, would that have been the same with somebody that's 18 or maybe not? But again, it pays dividends. Kindness pays dividends, I think. I mean, yeah, a lot of people may take advantage of it, but especially when you have the badge, the gun, the authority, kindness, honest kindness pays dividends. It does. It does come back and pays. It pays handsomely too. It's a difference between somebody telling you something as this guy did, who, by the way, his partner, who I know as well, has a doctorate too. It's amazing how smart people flock together. I keep in touch. Good people, very good people.
I remember her.
But she's good at talking to people. And, that's the secret. If you ever want to see in law enforcement, what separates, there's different levels, and there's your tough guys that you want a certain thing, but what separates the really good cop from good cops or average cops? The ability to talk to people.
For sure. This procedural justice concept or model, boy, could I have used it in my career. Because looking back, I remember there were some times that I mistreated people, right? And I paid for it. And then the times that I learned, and I'm more of a person of always giving the person the benefit of the doubt, talking to them, those scenarios, like as you guys, and I can tell you guys stories, but it's not about me, that people have saved my life because I treated them well. But I think the most important piece that I draw from this, looking back again and wishing that, coming up in the late 80s, early 2000s in law enforcement, that I would have benefited from is my mental health, my wellness. Because, often you get out of the car, you get to a scene, you want to take action, you're really quick to judge what's going on, and you jump in. And rather than the de-escalating, we escalated, or maybe I didn't take enough time to better assess the scenario, and then could have avoided a fight, could have dealt with a subject differently. So I'd like to shift the conversation a little bit towards the benefit of procedural justice training to a career in a discipline that you've seen at times nothing but the worst that humanity has to offer. You see good stuff, but how do you process that when it comes to procedural justice? How does procedural justice impact long-term officers' wellness?
If they operate with procedural justice first, legitimacy first, with being guardians first, and being guardians of the Constitution, of themselves, the way they act towards the public, guardians of the public, they're going to have less confrontations, less negative actions towards them, or never negative voice towards them. So that should reduce the number of instances throughout a career. So you're not going to have that everything comes back. I've said it to a lot of people. I was a SWAT guy. SWAT guys are tough. They don't cry. They don't complain. They just do their job. When I retired, all those emotions I bottled up now are come out uninterrupted. there's uncontrollable.
Well, let me ask you a question. I'm sorry, but I want to get a little deeper if you can. And we talked about this. You've been involved in shootings, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that if you had this philosophy, this training, right, been the root of your training in your law enforcement career, do you think that would have helped you deal with the emotional impact better over the years?
I think I would have gotten involved in less use of force, but because I would have been processing the incident much differently. The shootings, they're a last resort. I walked backwards. I walked going backwards from the front door of a house to the front door of another house. And I still ended up having to shoot the gentleman. So there's nothing I could think of. I've questioned myself on them. I've always come up to that was the last resort. I couldn't do anything else. But I do believe that I could have avoided a lot of the uses of forces I've had. That would have helped me out in the long run.
Your thoughts? I mean, would that have helped you?
Yeah, I mean, looking back, yeah. I mean, you try to keep a level head. I've been put in pretty hairy situations, robbery, narcotics, one-person unit in the worst neighborhoods, getting into stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes you go home and you question, what could I have done differently? I will say I've always tried to be the utmost professional and talk to people. I could fight, and sometimes you had to. It's never a winning proposition, even when it was a straight up, and a lot of them are wrestling matches, but a straight up fist fighting, maybe 7, 8 times. Yeah, I know how to fight, so it was okay. But you never, maybe you walk around like a big person, but it's nothing, you don't take it home proud. When you have that, because other people are seeing it, and they don't know the whole story, what happened behind you, almost look like you're the bad guy.
And we are judged by what people see, and they only generally see a snippet of it. So you're right.
In police work, to use boxing metaphors that I do, there's little you can do to enhance your speed, right? There's little you can do to enhance your strength. So what are you saying? Well, there's no way I can win. No. Enhance your endurance. That you can work on every day. You enhance your endurance. Let the other opponent, so to speak, tire themselves out. That's how that works. And that's about the only thing you can better yourself, the endurance to get through the career, right? To have the right training to get through that career, to come out on the other side in great shape. May not be slow, you may not have the power punch, but you'll be in a lot better shape than a lot of people are that and maybe kept it bottled in. And this is why it's so important to learn these while you're in the midst of your career, not after.
I wanted to have this conversation because you guys have been in the worst communities. You guys are warriors, right? That able to come out on the other side, have good outcomes. So I wanted to have this conversation to give the people that would watch and listen to this a understanding of the mindset and the impact of the actions that are taken.
I like in the book that I wrote, it was a thesis paper for one of my masters, that I converted it to a book. I liken a community to a stream. The stream has 3 areas. It has the structural portion. Does it have good schools, access to good schools, access to good paying jobs? But in the structural level, there's also, is there a perception that the institute that's meant to protect you, the government, has it collapsed, or is it working fine?
Question now.
That leads to the socialization process of the community. They socialize. If they believe that the institute is collapsed, they take matters into their own hands. That socialization process leads to the individual making the decisions. If we're working within the stream and we're using procedural justice with every contact, that stream is going to flow. We're working off all 3 levels. That stream is going to flow into a smooth pond. If we're not, if we're standing outside the stream and we're being firemen, only going when we got a call to pull that rock that's doing the ripple in the current, it's going to be a raging river. So if everybody in an agency is operating on the procedural justice, working within the community as part of the community, you're going to have more trust, more cooperation, less incidents of crime. Therefore, it's going to help you out in the long run because you're not going to see so many negative things. So that's going to help your mental health too. Everything is intertwined.
I get what you're saying. And obviously that's why we do so much training to reinforce behavior, right? To our desired behavior. But brother, man, you're stopping a guy or a gal, you're stopping somebody, and maybe they're a suspect, or maybe they're suspicious activity, or maybe you have a little more on them, and or you think they might have been involved in a crime, or they come at you in an aggressive manner. It takes a lot of discipline to go against your natural reaction of being defensive. And sometimes when you do that, you escalate.
You could you could use officer safety tactics and still be professional. You don't have to go to the car all the time. You can ask them to step out. You could ask them to walk in between the cars, and you walk around the back and open the door, and now you have a door between you. There's a lot of things you could do to de-escalate the situation. It's not going to work every time. It's going to work 99% of the time, 98% of the time. But you have to be that guardian first, and the warrior comes if it needs to. But you can't have the mentality of you're going to be a warrior all the time.
Sort of being the silent warrior, if you will. You have the
first impressions go a long way too. If you have a good military bearing, if you stand up, confidence, right? And they've done studies with cop killers, cop shooters, that why did you target this person? And it's an eye-opening.
Will be preyed on.
Yes. But you can be professional. And that's why the state troopers in all these states, how they look so squared away and their professionalism that goes hand in hand with it. But going back to a point that Ray was saying as well, sometimes police are looked upon as an occupying army, going in there like the firemen, right? An occupying army. And sometimes, we talked earlier, the methods of counterinsurgency. What is the main mantra of counterinsurgency? Because it applies here. You win the hearts and minds of the community. You win the hearts and minds. How do you win the hearts and minds of the community? By being professional, by speaking to people. Everything that Ray is talking about, it fits right in there. These are the steps to get to winning the hearts and minds of the people, where they will trust you, where they will buy into what needs to get done. And that goes a long way.
Yeah, and then in turn, for me, again, these shows are about helping with personal wellness. Like Ray, you had mentioned about how emotional you can get. And it just sitting around, maybe watching TV, and you have a trigger moment, and then you're caught up in an issue, in a feeling or a state of emotion that you didn't quite expect. You brought back something to me, because to this day, there's certain movies or shows that I just cannot watch. I tell my wife all the time, man, I'm going to go do something else. And that's the shows of abuse, right? But as we talk about this procedural justice implementation of training and this changing of mindset, I really come back to this piece. Does it help? I think it has to help. But I ask you, does it help a person's psyche long term?
I think it does in many ways. If you treat people right, you won't second guess yourself if it goes wrong. If you did the right thing. If you treat people right, you're going to most likely have I'm not going to say pleasant encounter, because nobody likes to get stopped by the police, but you're going to have an amicable encounter. They're going to look at you and they're going to say, I deserve the ticket. Or the guy was very professional. They might not think they deserve the ticket, but he was very professional. Or she. You're going to have reduction in crime. So you're not going to go from call to call of homicide, husband-wife disputes, of domestic violence. Things are going to be to a plateau. All of that will reduce the amount of negative interactions you have. In the long run, it'll reduce the negative effects of seeing all the bad stuff.
And you're talking about organizational wise, right? As opposed, well, it starts with the individual, but you're talking about broad adoption of this mindset.
Yes. I would love everybody in the organization to do that. But even if you take it by individual, if they act that way, they're going to know that every time they come across somebody and they treated them right, even if it came out wrong in the other end, They know they did everything the way they should have done it. If they come in with the aggressive force, what will happen is they'll second guess themselves in the long run. Did I have to do that? Did I have to act that way? Could this have been done differently? I had mentioned the incident with the pawn shop. I came in hard. Robin came in and asked me to step aside, and she took over. She achieved something that I wouldn't have achieved.
That was a dispute between patron and the business owner.
It was a customer dispute. The customer wanted his money back, and there were no refunds and no exchanges. I didn't even want to hear him. That was the law. They were closing up. He had to leave. She saw how I got. I was going to grab him and arrest him. She took over, and she calmed him down, and he walked out. If it would have been my way, I would have still be writing reports. Her way, everybody left, and we went to the next call.
Yeah, positive outcome, which is what you were saying.
Listen, and I think being proactive in that as well goes a long way. You know, the process often is more important than the outcome. And, you know, you just have to have that way about you. And you know what? It's contagious. It's contagious. Just like bad behavior is contagious, so is good behavior for other cops. They see, you know, squared away cops doing this. You see more and more, they'll gravitate more towards officers like that than they will that every department has them. I'm not singling out any department, but every department has your malcontents and your naysayers that always seem to be going up to calls to IA more than others.
Yeah. Go Flyers. You know, well said. Reflecting on what you guys are saying, I bring it back to you treating the public well. But what about treating yourself? And that's part of this procedural justice, is that you're going to treat others as they want to be, or as they should be treated, with respect. And then you have to treat yourself with respect as well. And I'd like to get into a couple minutes here, if you will, of that discussion of treating yourself well. And what does that look like for you who have been in law enforcement for part of, you're probably not going for 4 decades, right?
If you count the time that I've been training. I think if I would have known about, I believe that officers go into the profession to do well, to protect and serve. But like I have said, we're used to deterrence because of the training and because that's the way most of us grew up. We were told, do your homework or you go into your room early. If you don't do your homework, you're not going to eat. Things like that. So if I would have known about procedural justice, I would have used that much earlier in my career, and I would have achieved what I wanted to achieve, protect and serve, with less confrontational outcomes. That could have mitigated my emotions not being, they just come out. There's no control of them. It could have helped my health. I have metal plates in both my hands and my cervical spine, and my lower back is got 3 discs that are shot. That's all because of what I did in the street. I could have reduced a lot of that.
Sure. Any closing thoughts?
It's got to catch on. It's got to be bought into. Like anything else, it takes a little bit of time for something to kick in and become habitual. Not all habits are bad. This is a good habit to get into. It's a good way to proceed in law enforcement. You get a lot more out of it. You know, the old adage, you know, and listen, nobody's saying I was as aggressive as they came out in the street as far as putting people in jail. But you get a hell of a lot more with sugar than you do with vinegar. People see things that you don't think they ever saw. So if you think, I got away with this one, no, you didn't. And nobody may say anything, but you know what? Your bank, whatever's in that bank is called respect from other people in the community you serve, just went down a notch. And to me, respect was everything.
Yeah.
You didn't have to like me. Respect was everything.
Yeah, and we're not talking about, to be totally clear, we're not talking about being soft on crime.
No. Far from it.
At all. Because a person commits a crime willfully, intentionally, they got to go.
And let the community help us in getting that person. And they will when they buy in.
It's just talking about changing the philosophy or actually the way of treating people. Any last thoughts, Ray?
No, I just want to reiterate, you work to be a guardian of the Constitution, a guardian of the public. And and you keep your warrior ready to take action, but you don't think about him. You just know that he's there when you have to use him, and you'll be fine. You'll achieve the outcome of protecting and serving, getting more cooperation, and having a community where everybody is, for the most part, together, working to have a common goal of living their lives in harmony.
On that note, this has been another show of Bets and Badges. You can find us on all podcast platforms or bigger podcast platforms: Spotify, Apple, Amazon, iHeart, YouTube, and Miami's Community News, who we thank greatly. Our producer behind the scenes, Daniela Quevedo. We can thank you for producing our show. Michael, Grant Miller, also, and the Community News team, but more importantly, you, the audience. Catch us next time. Love to be with you, hear you. We'll talk to you again. Thanks.